What is going on, everyone? Welcome back to another video. Today I want to talk to you about SUBSIDIA. And what is SUBSIDIA style dubstep? Well, first off, as we've seen by their latest volume, they've really doubled down on what they want their style to be, which is just quarter note dubstep with sustains and fills. So if we go through any of this, fake out, so there's essentially five main things about SUBSIDIA dubstep that make it what they kind of will always want in their catalog. One, give or take, there is some sort of fake out. Usually it's going to be less energy, and it's usually either A, teasing the motif, or B, doing a complete switch up of the motif in that instance, which I'll explain later. Two, you have a downbeat and upbeat, so a 1 and 2 that are sustain free. It could be either the chug bass, or it could be usually some type of downbeat hit that is not this actual chugs or rhythm. 3, you have a sustain. It's usually pretty prominent and pretty up there. And then 4, you have rhythmic basses that are going to go underneath it. It can either be quarter note style or a little bit of flow back and forth. 5, you're going to have these massive fills that take up, you know, a bar and a half at a time, switching over to your B section. Okay, so before we get into it, let me show you what I actually made to see if it even interests you guys, and then I'll be breaking down kind of how you go about this process. Okay, so that's a drop. And we pretty much went over those 5 essential things. 1, we have some type of fake out. 2, we have a 1 and 3 that are clear of a sustain. 3, we have a fat sustain. 4, we have chugs to go with a sustain and a quarter note rhythm. And 5, we have these fills that are transferring us to our new sections. So, what is it like? Let's actually just go into this and show. One thing that I use is this just radio effect, which just creates these peaks, and this is how you're getting this gunshot thing right here. If I turn it off, it would sound like the full thing, and it's going to sound pretty loud with it. Once again, we're just trying to create a rhythm, and for me, I'm using this as like a heads up of what you're going to expect in this section. So when we come back to the B1 section, we already got a taste. We're like, oh, we heard that originally. Because usually in fake outs, you're going to put your main motif here. So when we switched it to do a little bit different, it's very stimulating to the listener. So that's first. So not much to really go over other than it's just a typical like gunshot style bass. From here, I messed with it, cut out lows, and created different sounds. And I kept on that radio for the first hit because I wanted to kind of feel hollow. The drum hits there, but it feels hollow. And then when the sustain hits, it all comes in. The downbeat is actually just a iteration of the gunshot, just played with the shift and played with the textures and warping and whatnot here. So it's pretty straightforward. And I did a reverb throw, and that is our initial downbeat. Once again, happened the same thing over here. It's because I want to return the listener back to something familiar. They heard it at the beginning, so when we come back to the turnaround, I want them to know, like, hey, we're back to this phrasing, because they only heard it at the beginning. So it's nice to have something familiar here, which that checks off box number 2, which is the down upbeat. So next we have our sustains. And I just made a simple sustain. I love making my sustains with multiple serum patches going through a post-processing. So this is pretty much just a very simple saw wave. I just wanted something gritty. And as you can see in this first one, it's like this. Really no movement or anything. Just a high notch sub that's not going direct out because I wanted to feed into the distortion. And we're using some J106 chorus. From here, I'm adding a little bit of dimension, but you'll see if I actually pull up this span, you'll see that it's very mono compatible. There's plenty of room on top, and I could even pull it a little more if I wanted to. I want my sustains to be more in the middle because my sub is doing what my sustain is doing. So if I scroll down, let's see, my sub is literally doing the same thing. So if they go together, so I need the more mono signal to replicate what my sub is doing. It's just easier for people when they listen to understand what they should be listening to. And from there, I just added another slight pitch envelope, and I believe an all pass is what I use. It actually does quite a bit. Adds a little more grit and the phaser and whatnot, just to taste. And then I just added a lower layer underneath it. And together it's going through some post-processing, and the post-processing does a little bit, definitely makes it thicker. We got like an old style VR fat rack, some trash, some multi-band because it does have some high end. You can see all that high end there. Really sustained, and I'm just driving it super hard and cutting it again. So now the chugs are multiple layers. I have a standard mid layer where I actually change the 126, it's a little shorter there, to 150 to kind of get some more throwing. And I have a higher layer, kind of blown out. And then I took some sounds from the sound design session and kind of did a blowout stereo layer. They are all going through a ton of processing as well, just to group and make them sound better cohesively. You can see that they are pulled up pretty high. You just hear the mud, so I got rid of that. And then I have my soothe running to sidechain to my sustain. So you'll see here, it's actually just sidechaining to the sustain. So if I play these two together, even though they both are pretty much pushing 0, this is not competing frequency with the other one. And together. Now, if you wanted to do more of a sustain front, you could do that. So that is how the chugs go underneath. I also added some gunshots on the every 4 and 2. It just kind of helps with that up motion. So once again, you're having a quarter note. Now you can get fancy, bump, check a womp. You can put whatever motif you want underneath. It doesn't have to just be bump, womp, bump, womp, you know? Like, have fun and do what you want, but stick within like quarter and eighth notes for the most part is what I see. And now we need our turnaround. So I just did some different resampling, had some fun, and created some fills that usually start on the 3 before the turnaround. So if you have a 4-bar section, right? So if you have 4-bar, 4-bar, so A is 4 bars, B is 4 bars, then at the before the last half note of your 4-bar is when your fills start going, and they usually go for a whole bar. So in my instance, I did this. Personally, for me, if I'm going to like tear out stuff, I like pulling out the low end and kind of just having that drastic change. So all together we have. This is awesome too because I changed the sustain. It's honestly the same one, but I just messed with a few things. So just added a little higher harmonic and wanted to push back. And this time, this one is actually sidechain to my guns. So now the guns are up front rather than being pushed back like the chug. So it's kind of a change. And you'll see I have the low end hitting here. So it's authentic to my gun pattern rather than my sustain like before. And that's just support layer. One more transient for this. Pretty upfront about this. Once again, I do the whole fill start on the 3, and it goes for a half bar. So you have the fill into the call again. For this part, I just took my sustain, pitched it down, and that was really it. I kind of wanted to do its own thing with the sustain, so I delayed the chugs coming in right away and let it go down and let them come in about half a bar late. So it's just by itself. It's an important thing to know is if you are ever pitch bending a sustain or something that's like really upfront, make sure your sub is doing the same thing. If your sustain's like whomp, your sub is like bap, it's not going to get the same thing. So you should add bend where bend is acceptable. Together, they're falling together. And once again, we're doing the turnarounds here, so we have just the chugs as their own. And then I just did some laser stuff. And then now I need to change up the B2. So originally came back, just lowered the guns. Then I kind of liked the sustain pitch bend, so I wanted to do it with this and have like a pause in the drop, which I thought was cool. And then I just chopped up and created a cool rhythm to end it out. Overall, make sure you have those 5 elements, and whatever your main focus is going to be, just make sure you are compensating. So if your sustain is more mono, you'll see my chugs are much wider. They take up, they're pretty much almost to the phasing point, because I will need them to be much wider than my sustain in that instance. I hope that helps and explain how you can make your own like Subsidia style dubstep. And if you guys have any questions, feel free to comment down below. Appreciate you watching, and I'll catch you in the next video.